Picture this. Right now, millions of people are glued to their screens, hearts racing, watching strangers throw a ball around. Some are wearing face paint. Others are yelling at their TVs like the players can actually hear them. And when their team loses, they're genuinely upset for days. Meanwhile, there's you could not care less. And guess what? Science says your brain might actually work differently than theirs. Let me tell you something important right off the bat. Not caring about sports doesn't mean you're weird. It doesn't mean you're antisocial. It doesn't mean you lack passion or that something is wrong with you. What it does mean is that your brain is wired in a fascinating way that's completely different from the majority of people who treat game day like a religious holiday. So let's dig into this. Why do so many people lose their minds over sports? Here's the truth: humans evolved as tribal animals. Thousands of years ago, being part of a tribe wasn't just nice to have, it was survival. Your group protected you from wild animals, helped you find food, kept you alive through harsh winters. Without your tribe, you were basically dead. Fast forward to today, we don't need tribes to survive anymore, but our brains haven't gotten the memo. We still crave that feeling of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. And sports teams, they're basically modern tribes, just with better jerseys and billion-dollar stadiums. When someone watches their favorite team play, something incredible happens in their brain. It starts pumping out oxytocin. You know what oxytocin is? It's the bonding hormone, the same chemical that makes you love your family and feel connected to your close friends. That's wild when you think about it. Their brain is literally fooling them into believing that these millionaire athletes running around on a field are part of their family. But here's where it gets really interesting. People who don't obsess over sports, they often have what psychologists call lower tribal instincts. Their sense of identity isn't wrapped up in being part of a group. They're more individualistic. They don't feel like they need to belong to something massive to feel whole or complete. There's actual research backing this up. Scientists did a study in 2019 and found something fascinating. People who don't care much about sports showed way less us versus them thinking. Translation: they don't automatically hate people who root for the other team. They don't see the world as divided into allies and enemies based on who wears what color uniform. Now let me blow your mind even more. What happens inside a sports fanatic's brain during a game is actually kind of alarming when you look at it scientifically. You know that excited feeling you get right before you open a birthday present, that anticipation bubbling up inside you? That's dopamine firing in your brain. Sports fans get that exact same chemical hit during games. Every single play, every possession, every close call. It's like constant little doses of anticipation and reward pumping through their system. And here's the kicker: it's literally addictive. Scientists have done brain scans using fancy fMRI technology, and they've discovered that watching your team activates the exact same reward centers in your brain as gambling does. The same pathways that light up when someone's sitting at a slot machine pulling the lever over and over. The really powerful part? The uncertainty. Nobody knows if their team is going to win. That unpredictability keeps the dopamine flowing nonstop. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most addictive reward pattern that exists in human psychology. It's the same principle that makes people unable to walk away from slot machines even when they're losing money. Your brain doesn't really care where dopamine comes from, it just knows it feels good and wants more of it. People who don't care about sports, their dopamine systems simply aren't triggered by watching other people compete. They don't get that chemical rush from vicarious competition. And this might actually be genetic. Researchers at the University of Chicago have found evidence suggesting that variations in your dopamine receptor genes can actually predict how much you care about watching competitive sports. Think about that for a second. Your complete and total indifference to whether some team wins or loses might literally be coded into your DNA. But there's another psychological layer to this whole thing. Sports fans do something that psychologists call basking in reflected glory. Pay attention to the language they use. When their team wins, they say, "We won." But when their team loses, suddenly it's "they lost." Notice how the pronoun switches. They take credit for victories but distance themselves from defeats. People who don't obsess over sports are way less likely to play these mental games. Their self-concept is more consistent. They don't need external victories from strangers to feel successful. Their self-esteem is more stable because it's not riding on things completely outside their control. Now, before anyone gets upset, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I'm just pointing out that there are real, measurable psychological differences between these groups, and understanding them is absolutely fascinating. Here's something that might sound contradictory. Sports fans actually score higher on certain empathy measures. They're practicing caring deeply about other people's struggles, even when those people are complete strangers who just happen to wear their team's jersey. So why don't non-sports people feel that same empathy for athletes? It comes down to something called empathy allocation. Every human being has a limited capacity for caring deeply about things. We can't care intensely about everything. We'd burn out, so people who don't care about sports, they're directing that empathy somewhere else. Social causes, personal relationships, creative projects, intellectual challenges, their caring is just pointed in a different direction. A study from 2021 found that people with low interest in sports scored significantly higher in openness to experience and appreciation for art and beauty. They're getting their emotional highs from completely different sources: art, music, nature, philosophical ideas. Their brains are seeking the same things everyone's brain seeks: reward, meaning, connection, transcendence. They're just finding it somewhere else. And let's be really honest about something. For some people, not caring about sports is actually a defense mechanism. Maybe they were bullied in gym class when they were kids. Maybe they felt excluded by sports culture growing up. Maybe they're rebelling against the aggressive competitiveness that often comes with sports fandom. Maybe they just never understood why grown adults scream at televisions over a ball bouncing around. Your indifference might have a backstory, or maybe you just find it boring. Both are completely valid. But here's the part that explains why sports fans and non-sports fans sometimes feel like they're speaking different languages. It comes down to how different people experience meaning in life. Sports fans find meaning in narrative: the underdog story, the incredible comeback, the dynasty that dominates for years, the bitter rivalry. It's compelling to them because it's unpredictable. It's real-life drama with genuine stakes playing out in real time. People who don't care about sports often find that randomness meaningless. They think, why would I emotionally invest in an outcome I have zero control over, performed by people I'll never meet, in a game that doesn't actually affect my real life? And you know what? They're not wrong. But sports fans aren't wrong either. It's just two completely different approaches to the human need for story and meaning. One group finds epic narrative in a championship run. The other group finds it in a novel they're reading, a relationship they're building, a creative project they're working on, or a scientific discovery they're following. Researchers call this parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans build one-sided relationships with teams and players. These players don't know the fans exist, but the fans feel deeply connected anyway. Non-sports people prefer investing their emotional energy where there's actual reciprocity, where their care actually matters to the outcome, where they're participants in their own story, not just spectators watching someone else's. Neither approach is superior. They're just different strategies for navigating what it means to be human. A psychologist named Csikszentmihalyi, who studied peak experiences, found that flow states, those moments when you're completely absorbed and time seems to disappear, can be achieved through countless different activities. For some people, it's watching sports. For others, it's literally anything else. And here's what's really interesting. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They're not spending 3 hours every Sunday experiencing someone else's struggle vicariously through a screen. They're engaged in their own challenges, their own growth, their own journey. There's something quietly powerful about that. So what does all of this mean for you? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing out on some fundamental human experience that everyone else is having. You're just different. Your brain's reward system operates differently. Your tribal instincts are calibrated differently. Your empathy is allocated differently. And that's not just okay, it's perfectly natural. The next time someone asks you, "Did you see the game last night?" and you genuinely could not care less, remember this: you're not broken, you're not boring, you're not missing out. You're just playing a different game, and your game might actually have higher stakes because it's your own life, not someone else's.